Well, I appreciate you very much taking the time to speak with me. I've had the opportunity to speak with four Methodist brothers uh, from Africa or in Africa, but very different places. So I've spoken with Jerry Kulah, who's in Liberia. I've spoken with Ande Emmanuel, who's in Nigeria. I spoke with another brother. Oh, I feel bad. I'm forgetting his name right now, but he's he's in Zimbabwe as well. Gabriel was his name. I think his last name was Mususwa or something like that. I don't know if you know him. And then I was able to speak with a college student. I'm going to be able to show the videos of Jerry Kula and Ande Emmanuel. And then I've also contacted an American who writes on Africa for News, and he had the names of several missionaries who serve in different places in Africa with whom I should speak. So I've
Uh,
very much enjoyed speaking with different people so far, and it's been very. I have much more to learn, of course, but to speak with Jerry Kula, the African theology mindset is very united, but there is disagreement about how to be in faithful covenant with Americans and how to be in faithful covenant with each other. And my agenda, the reason I want to have these conversations is I want for Americans to hear Africans speak for themselves rather than read articles about them. And so I knew that you were a person who is in a position to speak for at least many Africans, if not the African Methodist Church, because you work with the Wesleyan Covenant Association. I looked up the press release whenever you came on board, and you're not clergy, right? You are lay leadership.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're very, as clergy, I just want to thank you because so often it is very difficult to find lay leaders who are willing to serve on the level that you are. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you
Um,
very much.
yeah. What on the front end, and we're going to have a delay, so forgive me if I speak over you. It's not on purpose at all. But you know the gentlemen that I've spoken with and what they have to say, and I will do my best to bring their views into our conversation as well. But just right up front, well, maybe it would be good for people to know who you are a little bit. So, how is it that you have become a leader in this way? Where do you come from, and what is important to you?
Thank you very much, Jeff. My name is Simon Mafunda, born and bred in the United Methodist Church.
Mhm.
My parents, my mother especially, has been a thorough Methodist. You know, she's still living. She turned 100 years in September, on the 4th of September this year.
Oh, wow.
So, so we were brought up in the church.
Mhm.
And of course, coming out of college, coming into college, university, we started doing the university stuff and forgot about church. And going into my early years into the industry, getting a job, we were doing other things. But eventually, I came back to where I knew I belong. Maybe it goes back to the verse in the Bible that says, "Train up a child so that even when they grow up, they will not depart from those ways." So I had to come back in the early 90s, and gave myself back to Christ. So I started serving like with feeling that I still owe, I was something that is outstanding. I wasted a lot of years that I was idle. I was not serving the Lord. So I was like serving with a backlog. And I started being sent to do the Lord's work. Started as a section leader, within the cell groups of the home church. Then being elected in different positions up to the level of conference lay leader. For about 13 years, I was a conference lay leader for my annual conference in Zimbabwe East up until December 2021. And I've also served in different capacities at the central conference level and at general conference level. I have been a delegate from 2012 in also the special session of 2019 in Missouri. I was there as a delegate. And I've served in committees. Right now, I'm a member of the standing committee on Central Conference Matters. I serve in that committee, which still has to give a report to the 2024, which is like a 2020 General Conference deferred to 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm serving in that committee. And I have served in various capacities, within the church, locally, regionally, and internationally. And what's important for me is to see the church preserved as we have known it. And I'll be very upfront to say that I come from a very conservative environment. Africa is very conservative. And to make it worse, or maybe, I don't know, for the lack of a better word, we also come from a culture where certain things are an abomination, not just by the Bible, but by our culture.
Mm-hmm.
Then the Bible comes and affirms that. So you can see the strength of some of our beliefs being affirmed by the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in our culture, those things are also there, and things like that. So I really want to see a church that is preserved. We preserve what the Bible teaches, so that we pass a heritage that is undiluted for generations to come, way after we are all gone. What kind of church will the children of our children have
Mm-hmm.
when we are gone?
Yeah.
Will they remember us for preserving that for them? Will they be grateful to us for having done what we are doing now? Those are some of the important things for me. But really, I enjoy being a Methodist, and I've learned a lot being a United Methodist member up to where I am today.
Yes.
And just for the other part, yes.
Well, no,
Thank you.
keep going. I didn't realize you were going to keep going. I'm more interested in what you say than what I say. So go on.
No, that's fine. I'm married and blessed with two biological kids and two miracle kids that we adopted from the church, and two grandchildren, a boy and a girl. And my wife works for the church, for the United Methodist Church. She's the health board coordinator for the church. And she's a health professional. She's a nurse by profession. And I see her job, not just a job, but a calling, because she's so passionate about working with disadvantaged people, those in the peripheries, and stuff like that. Working with children, the sick and the disadvantaged. So I see her. I see that as a ministry for her, not just an ordinary job, but a ministry for her. So no, we thank God for where He has brought us from and where we are now, and we thank God for where He's taking us, even in the midst of everything that is happening within the denomination. We still thank God for where we are now.
Yes, amen. What is your first language that you speak?
I speak Shona.
Okay.
Shona is my mother tongue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your English is quite excellent. Did you spend any time in America or England?
Well, English is like our business language.
Okay.
Yes. So, and remember, we are also a former colony of the British.
Okay.
So English was introduced to us, from kindergarten. So you learn almost everything in English.
Okay.
Besides the other things that we do in our own vernacular languages, but English became our business language. So that's how we got to learn English.
Is your full-time job now with the WCA, or do you have a full-time job outside of the church?
I am self-employed outside the church. I run an automobile garage. We fix cars, not a very big operation, but we thank God for what we have. We fix cars, we do suspension, a bit of tires, wheel alignment, balancing, and all that kind of stuff. The economy is not performing as we would have wanted it to, but still we are managing to have our heads above the water. That's what I do. But of course, I then got engaged with WCA from 2021, up until now. It's not like a permanent job, but we'll see how things go. At least for now, I'm working with WCA as a compensated engagement with WCA.
Very good. I like to know that you are involved in automobile work. That's real work with your hands. People who work in those fields, I generally find to be much more practical and forthright. So I have people in my church that work with automobiles, or they have in the past, and I get along with that very well. Just a little bit about me. I'm a father of 4 children. I have a lovely wife who also works in the church, and I also had some years away from the church, where I left the faith altogether, and then the Lord called me back. So you and I have many things in common, uh,
Oh, yeah.
and I rejoice in that. My One of the things that I've been concerned about is the charge of colonialism or neo-colonialism. uh, the relationship between American Methodists and African Methodists is one where I think Americans need to be careful that we are being faithful and helpful, and not taking advantage of the differences and privileges that we have. So I've heard some voices saying, well, for instance, Emmanuel says that the relationship between the American Methodists and the African Methodists does have neo-colonialism involved, and he means that there have been gifts of money and power given by the American Methodists to the African Methodists that have made them behave in ways that they would not otherwise have done. And he talks about some of those specifics. And I don't wish to make people argue against one another. What I imagine is that most African Methodists would acknowledge that Americans have at least tried to influence things in Africa by where we have sent money or support. But do you think that that plays a large role in African Methodism, or do you think that Africans? Well, so before I let you speak, Jerry Kulah says that he thinks that the Africans would all be united in the United Methodist Church if it were not for Americans intervening and dividing Africans from one another. Do you find yourself agreeing more with one of them than the other, or do you have your own viewpoint on the role that America has played in Africa?
Thank you very much, Jeff, for that very pertinent question. The issue of neocolonialism, or whatever you call it, the way I've seen it, that rhetoric has been coming more from the liberal Americans.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard that rhetoric from the conservative Americans.
Right.
Or the conservative Americans alleging that the liberal Americans are, there are neo-colonial issues with Africa. You never hear conservatives saying that.
Mm-hmm.
So from my own perspective, there has been some influences in one way or the other,
Mm-hmm.
that I cannot deny.
Mm-hmm.
But the main rhetoric that is now coming, the bar was raised, especially after the 2019 General Conference. That's when we really heard a lot of noises about Africans being used by Americans, being used as pawns, for American, for the American conservative agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I believe this is coming from one side of the aisle, because if there is one thing that really hurt our friends who are more on the progressive side is the outcome of the 2019 General Conference.
Yes.
A general conference that we were all invited by our Council of Bishops to pray for. We gathered around across the whole denomination to pray for that special session of General Conference.
Mm-hmm.
And when a result came out of that General Conference, some of us as conservatives, we celebrated that God has answered us because we prayed for it.
Mm-hmm.
But surprisingly, there are those who seem to say, no, God did not answer quite properly.
Mm-hmm.
They expected another answer, a different one from this one. So
Yes.
according to them, God did not quite answer us properly.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided to demand more answers from God. That's how I take it.
Mm-hmm.
And from that time, there was an upsurge of that rhetoric to say, no, Africans are being used. Even a few of our own Africans, we can also quote them saying the same thing, that the Africans were used by the conservative American.
Yes.
And Americans used money to buy the African vote.
Yes.
But let me take you back to my introduction. I told you that there are situations here in Africa. Before we even open the Bible, there are certain practices which are an abomination according to our culture.
Yes.
Let's go straight to talk about the practice of homosexuality. In many African countries, actually, it attracts a jail term. So we take Africans who are coming from that background, before they even open the Bible, this practice is an abomination according to their culture.
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell me that those people need money to be able to vote against that practice. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So we are saying, I really believe, I'm convinced in my mind that this is coming from the liberal wing of the denomination, because they were hurt by the outcome of the 2019 General Conference.
Yes.
At the same time, if you look at the Africans, the conservative Africans and the conservative Americans, according to me, that's a natural relationship. Mm-hmm. It's so natural that the conservative Americans would easily work together with the conservative Africans because they have something in common.
Yes.
So yes, I actually feel that is the liberals who have tried to influence Africans for them to support their agenda. Why do I say this? There were people who came to Africa during the run-up to the special session of 2019, telling Africans that if you don't vote for the One Church plan, that's the end of ministry support, that's the end of funding, that is the end of partnerships in terms of project funding in different setups within the continent of Africa. So in my thinking, some of these people, even general agencies of the church, they were saying the same thing. So in my view, they were supporting ministry and projects in Africa in order to get something out of it. And they were now asking for a vote for the One Church plan attached to the projects that are being done. And tell you what, when the One Church plan failed, a lot of projects were abandoned. A lot of ministry funding that was happening, like church to church, family to family, a lot abandoned, confirming that some of those some of those activities were not pure. They had strings attached to them. They were not good gestures. They were not genuine gestures. They were done in order to receive at the end of the day.
Yes.
Then come the traditionalists. And unfortunately for Africa, most of the progressive churches and partners went ahead of the traditional partners to do ministry in Africa.
Okay.
So by the time some of the conservatives wanted to do anything, the progressives were all over the place, all over Zimbabwe, Congo, Kenya, everywhere. They were everywhere. So I really believe that this is a rhetoric coming from the liberal side of the game. But overall, yes, there has been some influences because even that brought fear to some of our people to say, if we don't vote for the one church plan, it means that's the end of funding for us. So we would rather vote for it in order to get funding. There were people with that kind of mentality.
Yeah.
But we thank God that overall, almost 100% of the Africans, they supported the traditional plan because it resonates with our beliefs and our way of life. So coming back to what you asked, whether Africans can stand united, if not for the influence of Americans, I can also say yes, I can agree with that school of thought, because right now there is a lot of negative influence on Africa. I'll pick one or two examples. As we speak, we have now 2 congregations that voted to be reconciling churches in Africa.
I was going to ask
But
you
when
about
you
that.
go on the ground, you may find that the ordinary member on the pew may not understand anything to do with LGBTQ issues. All they know is they've been told that, no, these are our friends. We cannot ban them from the church. We can't chase them away. We need to spread our hands and embrace them. And if you present it that way, obviously everyone will say, no, that's normal. Because we are Christians, we need to welcome everyone. We are all sinners. We have all fallen short of the grace of the Lord. So let's welcome everyone. That's where they end. They cannot go deeper to understand the real debate that is happening. That the issue is not about welcoming those in homosexuality practice, but is the issue of legalizing the practice. That's where the issue is.
Yeah.
We welcome them. Anywhere we are, we can welcome them. But the debate is, do we change our book of discipline to accommodate the practice of homosexuality? Do we change our laws, the laws of the church, the rules of the church, to ordain self-avowed practicing homosexuals? That's where the question is. So when you present it like, no, we cannot ban these people from the church, it's not fair, these are justice and blah, blah issues, I don't think that's a correct presentation of the problem. And I can bet if you go to Kenya right now, to those churches, and interview the ordinary pew members, they will not go to this length that I'm trying to explain to you. But we are saying this is what is happening in our midst. Those people have been attracted by a church, a big church, a modern church, state of the art has been built. And all these rainbow colors, fluorescent tubes have been installed inside. It looks magnificent. And to an ordinary member, they will say, wow, these are angels from heaven, man. They've brought us a wonderful church. You've been worshiping under a tree. So for them, they are seeing a beautiful building. They don't even understand the meaning of the rainbow colors in terms of the debate that is happening.
Yeah.
So for me, that is a kind of an influence. Because they were told to go, these donors, these partners who are coming to build a church here. So they celebrate, they ululate, they whistle, they clap their hands. They are so happy. And now, boom, that church is there, it's dedicated. They don't know about those rainbow colors. For them, it's just beautiful. It's got red and yellow and green colors, period. So I think that is a kind of an influence that we need to think about. If they go further and understand what it means, I'm sure it will be a different story. So influences, certainly they are there, but overall, I believe Africans can still stand even with working with with our Americans, as long as we agree on these fundamentals. I don't see why we cannot stand and work together like what we have already done.
Yeah, it's so when I was aware of only I think you said there are 2 churches in Kenya. I was only aware of the one, and I think the name of the town is Mohito. And there were a couple of articles written about Bishop Wandabila actually blessing or dedicating that church. And so to many conservatives in America, to many liberals in America, they look at that and say, oh, look at that. In Africa, they have many liberals there as well. To many conservatives, we have wanted this, okay, is it possible that Africa is not as traditional as we thought? Is it possible that the bishops are not traditional? And so if I understood your answer correctly, actually everybody is traditional, and the role that Western money has played is to create this illusion or this impression that liberalism is to be found in Africa, when really it's not. Did I understand that correctly?
That's my take. That's
Okay.
exactly my take.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
I think I need to find a way to speak with somebody in at least that congregation, because I think, well, the whole purpose of me doing this is to let people speak for themselves. And I get I get tired of Western voices that talk about non-Western voices as though they have no free will, or that they're being manipulated. Um, so one of the differences between liberalism and traditionalism, liberalism looks in differences of power, and says that whenever there are two parties and there's a difference in power, then there's always going to be bad behavior or abuse. Conservatives would say, no, Africans do not have as much money as us, but they are equals in Christ Jesus, and we can be in respectful, honorable relationship with them, even when uh, we have different privileges or norms than them. And that's I everybody in Africa that I've talked to has acknowledged that point. They would take issue with the way that America sometimes, well, individual Americans or churches or general agencies have tried to influence things. But even so, I haven't heard, well, one African did say it might be better for us just to be on our own rather than connected to America. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about, um, you're affiliated with the WCA, and at least in the America, the WCA has its own agenda. But I'm sure you are familiar with the Christmas covenant idea, which has regional autonomy, which would allow Africa to have many of its own norms and practices that are different from America. The liberals in America are a fan. They like this plan because it would allow them to change their rules about sexual behavior and identity. Do you think that there's much support in Africa for letting Americans go our own way with sexual behavior, continuing to take money from missions in America, but allowing Americans to abandon the language that we have had up until now about homosexuality? Do you like the idea of the Christmas covenant, or do you think that's a bad decision?
Thank you very much, Jeff. Um, right, the Christmas covenant, I don't quite like the idea. Uh, First and foremost, as central conferences, we have always had that opportunity to adapt certain parts of the Book of Discipline to contextualize certain things. If we did not do it, it's not anyone's problem, but that opportunity was there. Like you said, because we are conservatives, we are more for being a connected church, irrespective of our differences in our economic backgrounds. We want to be one people that connect, and our unity is based on the man who died for us on the cross. That is the man who binds us, which is Jesus Christ.
Yes.
I say this because we are really getting fed up of a relationship where it's like this United Methodist, it's an American church with different branches and outposts all over the world. And they have to kind of dictate the pace of what we should do and how quickly we should do it is dictated from the Americans. We don't want that kind of setup. We want a church that respects everybody.
Yes.
No matter where you come from geographically, we take each other as equals. We want a church that takes mission and ministry, even from Africa to America. As we speak, it's like ministry and mission should come from America to Africa to all over.
Right.
Yet, no, we are saying we have a lot to offer, Jeff.
Right. Yeah.
Africans have got a lot to offer.
Right.
We want to see a situation where mission goes from Africa to America.
Right.
We don't believe that you have everything that you need. And I also believe that Americans also know that Africans don't have everything that they need. So it's a side-by-side walk that we need to promote. I was giving some friends some examples of some mission trips that we experienced here in Africa. I'm being very genuine here, and it's an open talk. We have seen cases where mission teams come to Africa, maybe a team of 25 people. They come here, they spend maybe a good 2 weeks. The first 2 days, they go to an orphanage. They offer, 2,000 United States dollars for the support of that orphanage. Then they go to another place. They offer maybe $5,000 there in cash or whatever, and some other goodies that they bring. In total, they leave about maybe $8,000 worth of goods and money to support ministry in Africa. In the meantime, we are talking of 25 people who flew from America, a round trip. If you put a value to their air tickets, that's quite a couple of thousands of dollars. Then the final week, they all go to Victoria Falls. They enjoy a holiday there. And at the end of the day, if you enumerate what they have spent for this trip to support ministry, for us, they were here for a holiday. Maybe they have spent $25,000, $30,000 on themselves, going to Victoria Falls, the air tickets and everything, only to leave $5,000 for ministry.
Right. Yeah.
We find that very awkward. This is what we are talking about. So really, we want to say, if Africa can offer worship, maybe the way we sing, if you think that can benefit Americans, we'll send a team of worshipers, a team of people who can sing the way we sing in Africa, and we merge that the way you do it, America, and let's see the product if it doesn't bring more people to Christ. We want to see a situation where if in America, probably you no longer do the section meetings, what we call the home group church. We do that. This is what has grown the church in Africa. If you are not doing it, we can send missionaries there to train people on section groups, the small group church, and that kind of stuff. This is the kind of relationship that we are talking about. So as Africans, I think we have a lot to offer.
Yes.
And we this is the church that we want. I do not quite support the Christmas covenant. Number one, it maybe those who crafted it should be able to explain some of the questions that we are going to raise, maybe as we get to general conference. Hopefully the delegates will raise those questions. Number one, the Christmas covenant does not seem to offer us a solution on the issues that are bedeviling our denomination right now. Because if we regionalize and then say the issue of human sexuality, you deal with it in your regions, but we can still meet as a denomination, and that issue doesn't become an agenda. When in the first place, the issue of human sexuality, the issue of marriage is an issue that cuts across the whole world, the whole globe, the whole planet. We define marriage in the same manner. So my worry is if marriage is then defined differently in America and differently in Africa and the Philippines, and we are still one church with a different definition of marriage, that worries me quite a bit.
Yes.
And further to that, there are even issues that build on that. Because if you look at the same gender marriages, they are also demanding for rights, if they are not already given in America, the right to adopt children. Those are issues that worry us as Africans. A same gender couple decides to adopt a child. For us, we don't understand. We are still trying to process how does that child relate to these similar gender people that are supposed to be their parents.
Yeah.
things like that. We find it very difficult to understand.
Yes.
So all those issues, we believe we don't resolve them by regionalizing. Number two, if you look at the Christmas covenant per se, it actually gives more power to America. It gives more to the Americans than central conferences. Right now, the original proposal, unless it's get modified, because I'm sure there's a room to do more petitions now, because I think it was said that, the postponement of a general conference resets the deadline for submission of petitions. By implication, I think we may have to have the opportunity to submit more petitions, or maybe modify the ones that were in for 2020. I don't know. But as it is now, it gives 4 layers of administration to the Americans. You have your annual conference there, the regional conference there, the jurisdiction there, and the general conference. And it gives 3 layers of administration to the central conference, all areas outside of America. You have the annual conference, the regional conference, and the general conference. And no one has been able to explain that to us. Why is it like that? And I think there are a lot of questions about the Christmas covenant that some of the African conservatives do not like. And when we look at the Christmas covenant, for us, it's just the one church plan in a different color cover, or in a different worksuit. That's how we see it. Yeah. It's exactly the same as one church plan, this big tent church where we need to tolerate each other. How do we resolve these fights that have gone this long, that almost degenerated into a fist fight in Missouri? It was horrible. We don't want to repeat that kind of experience.
Right.
How do we resolve that?
Yeah.
Do we think by just regionalizing we have resolved that? I don't think that for me, I don't think it will work, and I don't think it will get support from the majority of Africans. That's how I assess it.
Yeah, that all makes sense to me. I want to offer one reflection on things that you have said. Of course, you're a different person from other people I've spoken to, so you've said some different things. One of the things that you've said, I've heard other people from Africa say this, is the culture here is already against homosexuality or gender ideology, something alongside that, or bringing up the fact that there are laws in place in your state, institutions that are against it. In America, the reason that we're so confused theologically is because our laws have changed. So our laws have made homosexual practice equal to heterosexual practice. And because our laws have changed, now we want to change our theology. And what I'm a conservative as well. What we argue is that the norms and practices of the church don't have anything to do with the norms and practices of the world. It doesn't matter what is legal or illegal in the United States of America. It only matters what is right and wrong through God's eyes. And God has spoken about what is right and what is wrong. So I believe that most of the Africans with whom I've spoken, that you would agree that even if your laws there changed and suddenly the state of Zimbabwe said gay marriage is okay, gay couples can adopt children, even if that happened, you and other United Methodists would say, nope, this is against God's law. We are not changing our minds on this. Am I right to think that?
You are very right, Jeff. I can give you a very simple example of our neighboring country, South Africa.
Okay.
South Africa, by the law of the land, they've legalized same-gender marriages. But go into our churches, they say, no, this is not to be done according to the Bible. And the government does not force those churches to do it, because those are their beliefs. And some of the cultures in South Africa say no. So if those laws would change according to the rules and laws of the land, I don't see the Methodist Christians adapting to those changes. They will maintain what the Bible says, that this is an abomination, this is not compatible with the Christian teaching, and they will not do it.
Yeah, I suspect the reason why you and others bring up the fact that it's illegal in your countries is because you want us to understand that we are asking you to change not just your theological beliefs, but your culture, and that we are that is kind of like an imperialistic or not a good way to be in relationship with you. But unfortunately, I think a lot of liberals, when they hear you say it's not with our culture, we don't like it culturally, I think what they hear is, oh, they're bigots over in Africa, and they come from a bigoted culture. They come from they would think of that as like backwards or something. And so it's our job as enlightened Westerners to change your culture. And then, of course, the United States government has had international efforts to change how different nations around the world treat gay people and what laws they have on the books. And there are many United Methodists who would see the role of the United Methodist Church in America to influence the United Methodist Church in Africa to be more tolerant of gay lifestyle and decisions. So I think that's the water we're swimming in. I think that's the dynamic going on. That's how I have, at least currently, that's how I understand what happened in Mojito, Kenya, and with Bishop Wandabila. My understanding is just there has been a lot of Western pressure and conditional money that has said, you will abide by this, otherwise we will not be your friends anymore. And Africans, for obvious reasons, would love to be friends with Americans. But the thing you have offered here that I haven't heard anyone talk about yet, and I want more people to be talking about, is Africans have many gifts to offer North Americans. You have strengths in the church there that can be exported here or gifted. I don't know what the right word would be, but there is no reason why it should just be a bunch of American people, American resources going over to Africa, and there should not be African. And of course, we have had Africans coming over for General Conference for some time, but I think it's far past time. We should have had General Conference in Africa long before now.
Yeah.
So the question I'm wanting to ask you now is, so in America, conservatives have wanted to we're tired of fighting. We just want to leave. You know, we're done. The liberals will not leave. They are going to stay and disobey forever. In Africa, it's you don't have to deal with it up close like us. In America, all the richest conservative congregations are saying, we're leaving, we're disaffiliating. But in Africa, I spoke with Jerry Kulah. He said, no, we don't want to disaffiliate. We want to stick with the United Methodist Church until, if they change their standards on sexuality, if they take the liberal position, then we need to go. But until then, we want to stay, and we want to help this denomination conform to God's word. And so I have been very interested in hearing Africans talk about, well, I want to encourage you, and then I want to hear you talk about, I think that Africa should become the center of the United Methodist Church. And of course, you know, the Philippines, Eastern Europe, there are other places that should still have a voice. But I think it's time for North America to take a back seat and to let the Africans lead. And what do you think is standing in the way of that? Do you think that the African United Methodist Church enjoys the Americans being in charge for the most part? Or do you think that that Africans would really like to take more of a leadership role, and that Americans have stood against that in one way or another? What do you think about all that?
Thank you very much. Let me first pass a comment on your last remarks on the issue of tolerance of the LGBTQ people and all that.
Right.
I think really there are two issues here. The first issue, of course, is the Africans are saying we cannot accept this practice.
Right.
It's not supposed to be done. It's an abomination. It's wrong. You can be arrested, blah, blah, but it goes on like that.
Right.
Then there is the second part that I think as Africans, we also need to help our people. This is where I would personally call upon the church to quickly move and train pastors and lay people to be able to handle cases of people who are in who are homosexual. They are being stigmatized. The way they are treated in Africa, it's like, far below being human beings. And we don't also want that. So we want a case whereby if we have some people who are in that situation, we need the church to come up front and be able to handle those situations, train people to give counsel to those people so that they are not stigmatized. They still be able to be in society, be able to fellowship with others, and we handle those cases, remembering that they are also human beings. That part, we really need training and counseling to come to handle those cases.
Let me
Because
put
right
that in
now,
my own words so that I make sure I understand you. There are ways in which United Methodists in Africa want to stand against their own culture when it comes to people who are participating in gay acts, or the culture there treats these people as though they are less than human. And you believe it's the church's role, conservative or not, that it's the church's role to protect their dignity and to love them, even while you're still calling them to live differently. You stand against the culture that would dehumanize them and abuse them. You defend their dignity and their worth. Do I
correct.
understand you correctly?
Very correct, Jeff.
Okay, I
think
think that's
that
important for
part is
us
very
to know.
important. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's now move to the issue that you just raised. It is correct, according to my own thinking, that I think the mentor of the UMC leadership has since moved from America to Africa. That's my conviction. And it is upon us to grab it and run with it. I always call upon leaders in Africa to stand up and grab this opportunity and provide leadership within the United Methodist Church. But I also believe that some of the Americans, especially on the liberal side, have been in the way. They don't quite want where it begins. It starts with the financial resources. It has been very difficult for Africans to participate fairly in issues of voting on financial matters when they've contributed very little. And some of the liberal Americans, they look at that and they guard that jealously. They really feel like because we contribute 95% of the church fiscus, so we have to more say on that. This is, I think, where it all begins.
Okay.
And that's why you see the fight that was waged by the traditionalist Africans through Africa Initiative, and of course with the help of our traditional caucuses in America, to try and fight for more representation in boards and committees of the General Church. For a long time, we really never had people in the University Senate. Look at, for example, the Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters had almost like 80% Americans in that. And yet Americans are not in central conferences. Logically, you would have thought that you will have like 80% of Africans and other people in the central conferences in Europe, in the Philippines, Eurasia, making up the Central Conference Matters Committee. Up until 2012, when we started to argue along those lines, to say, no, let's change this representation structure. It's not adding up. Look at, I was talking of, okay, I've been a lay leader for 13 years. We did not have a single person from the central conferences delivering the lay speech at General Conference until 2012. When we had this lady from Zimbabwe, she's now late, who was the first lay leader from Africa to deliver a late speech at General Conference. It was all Americans. And then we got the second person in 2016. I was chosen to deliver a speech with other friends. I was the second African to do that since General Conference started.
Right.
Those are some of the things that we are talking about, and there has been an intentional move to minimize the number of influence of Africans within certain bodies of the church. Look at the powerful commissions like the Commission on General Conference. We never used to have many Africans in there. Look at Judicial Council, all those things. So we have been fighting and arguing about the representation in all those, and it was starting to happen. So while some of the Africans have not been fast enough to grab the opportunity, but I also believe that our friends from the Western side kept on, throwing spanners in it to limit the amount of influence the Africans can put on key decision-making processes. This is why I also don't like the Christmas covenant. Both the regionalization, for me, takes away the opportunity for all those people to be able to participate in the key decisions of the church. So it's a way of, I call it the regional segregation when we look at it. This is why I also don't like the Christmas covenant for the very same reason. But I do believe that Africa can easily become the center or the place where you may find the original Methodism. It is going to be preserved in Africa, and we need to be intentional about that. And I believe that's where we are going. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, it's exciting to think about that. It's also discouraging to see all the ways in which the Americans have defended their own authority rather than share it with others. And of course, I think that's because my theory is that the leaders of the United Methodist Church for a long time have leaned liberal, and they don't want to elevate voices that are conservative. One of the things I've wondered, I don't know if it's because Africans just have more honor, but it would be very easy for Africans to take an angry posture and call them racist and say that they have refused to let Africans in positions of authority because Americans are racist. I think that would be very effective because Americans are very concerned about never being racist. I don't need to hear too many details, but when African leaders get together, are you at all talking optimistically about taking leadership in the United Methodist Church, or is the leadership more just trying to defend against liberal manipulation? Do you find that African Methodists are optimistic about taking a leadership role in the future, or do you feel like things are kind of falling apart and you're just trying to defend what you can?
At the moment, I really feel that Africans are very optimistic about taking leadership in the future. But here is where the problem is. We have suffered quite some division, or there has been a rift between some of the key African leaders versus our Episcopal leaders. There has been a gap.
Yes.
And sadly, there has also been a division within the Episcopal leaders themselves. And I have not seen some intentional efforts to bring this back together so that we speak with one voice. You will hear all Africans saying that we are traditionalists, we are traditionalists, we are traditionalists. But when we dissect this whole thing, you will see that among those people calling themselves traditionalists, we have liberals in there. We have institutionalists who are also kind of liberal linked within our leaders in Africa. So because we have not made a concerted effort to close this gap and try and speak with one voice, it becomes very difficult to see which leaders are aspiring to take up leadership in the future. If they do that, either they are labeled as they are fighting their bishops, or they are trying to please Americans for the sake of getting money. There are all sorts of colors of painting these people. But intrinsically, I really see that Africans, they are clamoring to they are really aspiring to take leadership even in future, to try and give direction even as we go forward. But I guess the biggest hurdle has been this issue where we have not been very open to each other, some of the leaders and some of the Episcopal leaders. I will give you a very good example. Coming out of General Conference 2019, the traditionalists went there as like the underdogs, trying to support the traditional plan when everyone, the council of bishops, the majority of them, the general agencies, American liberals, they were singing the one church plan.
Right.
And for many, it was just a low-hanging fruit for them. But when eventually the tables turned and the traditional plan prevailed, we came back celebrating the traditional plan together with all our African bishops. We celebrated that. And the product, I mean, the result was delivered by the efforts of people like Africa Initiative, WCA, Good News, that coalition of traditional caucuses. They worked hard to deliver that result. Now, when we come where we are now, the same African bishops who celebrated the result of unless they were not genuine, they were not sincere, we start to question that. If they were sincere, we now ask, why are they now denigrating Africa Initiative and WCA, who haven't changed their mandate? We haven't changed our goals. We're still fighting for the orthodox, traditional understanding and interpretation of scripture. This is what we are still fighting for. We haven't changed it. And now we all of a sudden, we are accused of having departed from our original goal of helping our delegates. Now we can see our delegates are being disenfranchised as we go forward, because there has been a declaration that we will not tolerate any activities of these two groups in Africa. And if you look at it, Africa initiatives made largely of delegates to General Conference. So already there has been an intentional disenfranchisement of the delegates to General Conference and Central Conference by the powers that be, because now they can't gather and discuss petitions under the banner of Africa Initiative. Maybe they will start another thing to be able to bring those delegates together. One thing that we thought we had made good mileage, we never used to be able to bring delegates to discuss petitions, all this time until we formed Africa Initiative. And as we even go to 2024 General Conference, we still expect some of the newly elected delegates elected for the first time to be able to get some orientation and interface with some of the veteran delegates so that they bring them up to speed with what happens at General Conference. So we can see ourselves being disadvantaged. But what I'm saying is, in that kind of setup, it becomes very difficult now to be able to bring up the leaders, support them, and send them forth to lead the church, because there's a lot of suspicion, there's a lot of mistrust, there's a lot of backbiting. This is what is happening right now as we speak. But intrinsically, like I said, I really believe Africans are aspiring. They have this push inside them to take leadership and give direction of the church as we go forward.
That all makes sense to me. I'm an optimist as well, but there are ways in which people, as I hear about the problem, I wonder what is keeping Africa Initiative leaders from just driving over to the bishop's office and saying, let's be friends now. Let's iron this out. Is there any chance, do you think there's any chance that the bishops will change their mind about Africa Initiative and WCA and GMC? Do you think there's any way that they will see things your way and realize, oh, we're all theologically on the same page and we desire the same things? Or do you think that is just not possible, and that the African bishops in large part have separated themselves from the lay leadership of the conference?
That's a very difficult question, Jeff. The problem is they've made very serious utterances. It depends really on their ego and their pride. If they are bold enough to climb down, it was going to be very important to make good this relationship, to reconcile, because Africa Initiative has come a long way. And African Initiative has a very powerful relationship with delegates to General and Central Conference. Never overlook that. And remember, bishops don't vote at General Conference.
Right. Yeah.
They may offer advice, they may say this and that, but they also need to remember that they do not vote at General Conference.
Right.
So that makes it imperative for the bishops to reconcile with African Initiative, try and understand even WCA. My worry is that maybe there has been bad blood between these two groups, such that it overrides everything else, even some of the important things. These guys can no longer listen to, they bypass everything because of the bad blood. But it is my prayer that the bishops rethink and try and bring these groups back together and talk over these issues. Because for all UK, African Initiative really made some efforts through our general coordinator, Jerry Kulah. We tried to make some effort to reach out to the bishops. And before that, our bishop used to invite us when they have their All Africa colleges meetings. They would invite us for some updates, for some insights, and we would go there and present what we are doing and all these things. That relationship just got cut off all of a sudden, and there's a barrage of accusations that we have departed from our original plan, we are being used and all those things.
Yes.
But I would really pray that they take 2 steps back and consider rebuilding that original relationships. It's best to come and argue in closed doors and fight in there until you find a way of agreeing, even to disagree.
Yes.
Because once you start to declare embargoes and the zero tolerance issues, you are actually creating underground movements.
Yeah.
Which become even more dangerous for you. You'd rather see these people openly doing whatever they are doing, whether it is wrong or not. You'll be able to correct them because you can see them doing those things.
Yes.
But once you make these declarations, you are creating underground movements. And that's very dangerous for the leadership of the church.
Yes.
So it is my prayer that the bishops need to climb down. They are Christians. They are our fathers. We respect them. We love them dearly. We want them to remain fatherly to us and come down and let us talk. And if they heard things, we don't know what was the source of those allegations. But they would have just called and say, you key leaders come. We seem to be seeing these diversions. We are hearing these comments. We saw you guys in this meeting. We suspect things are not going well. What is happening? Then we'll be able to present our issues. Then we can talk and sort out things if there was anything to be sorted out. But I worry that there have been just too many utterances. And if ego rules over them, then they will not be able to climb down. They will just keep on moving with that kind of authoritarian kind of leadership. But it was best for them to come down and bring some kind of reconciliation so that we speak with one voice. Other than that, because now we can also see the cracks within the bishop's body itself. It's so apparent, it's so glaring. You can see that they are not together anymore. And that's not healthy for the church in Africa. But I know that on the pew, these guys are thoroughly traditional.
Yeah.
It's just that we were socialized in a manner that we respect our leaders, we take leadership from them, and we trust them to give us leadership.
Yes.
But when it then came to these very crucial issues, I think these issues, they need all people to participate. So it was imperative for the bishops to open up to their people, to their congregations, so that they understand and they also give their input. Then the bishops would overall give their advice. But unfortunately, the trend has been such that information was kind of controlled. It was ordered by the leaders, and the ordinary people, up to now, they don't have a clue what is happening.
Yeah.
They don't have an idea what we are talking about. So that is not healthy for the church. We need to give the information openly. Like if you check the spirit and the letter of the protocol, it really encouraged all the leaders to allow their people to talk about these things, to be very open and allow them to be part of it. Yeah. Because those things impact on the integrity of their faith. So they deserve to know what is happening. But I guess the bishops had their own way of doing things, and maybe they got overtaken by events and things became a bit chaotic, but it's never too late. It's a matter of just giving people things as they are. There are disaffiliations in America right now. It's a fact. People need to know, why are people disaffiliating?
Yeah.
There are big petitions still pending right now. People need to know what's the situation, what are people's feelings about the protocol, the Christmas covenant, all those things. Ordinary people on the pew, they need to know these things because those things impact on their faith.
Yes.
So they deserve to know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a very healthy situation. And I really implore our bishops to climb down and ask these groups to sit down around and talk about these things. It's never too late.
So,
and most importantly, we are Christian leaders. So we should be able to take compromises, to climb down even when it is very painful. We should be able to do that for the sake of the bigger picture.
well, let me encourage you, because I think, so if I imagine my local church, and if I was being prideful, then yes, I need to step down, and I need to climb down from my perch, and I need to humbly approach my people. But if I were too prideful to consider that, then I would like to think that the people in my church would lovingly approach me, publicly approach me, and put me in the position of being showing my faith, showing my quality. What I would really like, I'm an outsider, and there are dynamics that I just can't appreciate there. But I would love it if the WCA, GMC, Africa Initiative, you already put out one letter that I thought was good. I thought the tone was good and humble and invitational. But if there were a way that you folks could publicly, for all the world to see, seek unity with your bishops and bring them back to the table, and then if the bishops then refused and said, no, we won't deal with them, then I think that would be unfortunate. But if the thing I'm saying is, if the bishops have to make the first move, I'm pessimistic about that. But if the evangelical caucus, the conservative groups in Africa, step forward, especially with maybe a couple of the other bishops at your side, I would like to be hopeful about that. So I hope that there is some way that y'all can seek that unity, because I think if the African voice is split, then it will be possible for Americans to dominate, even though they are not in the majority anymore. Yes, they have the money, but they don't have the people. Our churches are shrinking. Our most vital churches are leaving. We should not be in charge. But if we are effectively dividing the African church, then we're going to continue to be in charge, even though we shouldn't be. And I don't like that. The other thing I wanted to, I wanted to give you a chance to rebuke some accusations that have been made against the evangelicals there. And so one of the things that I have seen said is that Africa Initiative statements or WCA statements have not been written by Africans, but they have been written by Americans who then sent it over to Africans to pretend as though they had written them. Could you speak to that at all? Has that happened?
Thank you very much, Jeff. Yeah, that really, we really get angry when we hear those statements. It's very denigrating, and really it pulls us down when people imagine that we are like morons, we are like kids. Some people have to think for us. That is very denigrating, and we really get angry. I remember one bishop actually said that, Africans, I wonder when Africans will grow up, they need to grow up.
That was Bishop Carcanio. Yeah.
Yes, Minefa Cacanho. We can't take that. We are able to think for ourselves. We don't need to. I can't imagine how people can even imagine that we need Americans to write statements for us. We write for ourselves. We speak for ourselves.
Okay.
And again, if you trace the source of these allegations, it's coming from the liberal side of our denomination, because they can't still go over the 2019 General Conference, that result. So they continue to pile all sorts of allegations on Africans. Remember, even at General Conference, there were issues of cheating. Africans tried to cheat, all those things. All sorts of allegations have been coming. I tell you, it makes us very angry.
Yeah.
We can stand on our own.
Yes.
We don't need any money to buy our vote because we know exactly what we want. This is why I told you that the Africans have a natural relationship with the traditional Americans because we speak the same language. This is the same relationship that was sought after by the liberals, and they could not get it. It's unfortunate for them because the people they are trying to approach are thoroughly traditional. So it's really unfortunate for them. But they've been all over Africa to try and partner with Africans to support their agenda. So it's not right. It's really mischievous to suggest that all these things that we do, all these statements that we put out, all these votes that we cast, someone is directing us to do that.
Yes.
We refuse that, and we rebuke it in the strongest of terms.
Okay.
We are mature people. We are mature Christians. We are leaders. We are respected leaders from all walks of life in Africa. And we can't even imagine that there are people who still think that way, that there are people who think for others.
Right.
That must be, they must quickly unlearn that, because it makes us angry, to say the least.
And I appreciate you being patient with me as I ask that, but I do think it's important for Americans to hear a response to that rather than, I think if I didn't ask that question, people would still hold on to that. And I think it's important for them to see your response. The other thing I want to have you respond to is the accusation that the WCA and Africa Initiative are trying to split the African church and get churches to leave to go to the global Methodist church. I know the bishops made that accusation in their writing. Emmanuel thinks that it is the agenda of the WCA and the Africa Initiative to split the United Methodist Church in Africa. Would you rebuke that? Would you argue against that?
I'll argue strongly against that.
Okay.
Why would we want to divide the church in Africa? For what reason? Let us go back to where the debate is, where the actual where the bone of contention is. We have a debate here which has been going on. We have been accused of destroying the church, but we have been asking questions: who is destroying the church here?
Yeah.
When people don't stick to their own doctrines, they break their own rules without consequences.
Yeah.
They indicate right and turn left in broad daylight. Then those who challenge them are then accused of destroying the church. I find that very awkward. All we are demanding as leaders in Africa is, let us give our people correct information of what is happening. Should Africans decide to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church, it's their decision. You cannot tell them the truth and then force them to stay if they wanted to go. Let us simply give the information to the people. Then they should be able to make their own decisions. If they want to leave, it's their decision based on the truth that is being given to them.
Yes.
Let us not, why are we becoming very angry with the traditionalists? We are simply telling people things for what they are. Then we get angry with them. Why? Actually, we then accuse you of holding back information to people who need that information. You want them to stay in the dark, and you dictate the pace for them. You dictate the direction for them, which is also very wrong.
Yes.
So every ordinary pew member must understand what is happening in this denomination.
Yeah.
If they have to make certain decisions, whether they want to stay in the United Methodist Church, whether they eventually want to leave, it's up to them.
Yeah.
Why should you force them to stay? And how do you feel? Do you think we will grow a vibrant United Methodist Church with members who have been forced to stay in there?
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I would rather allow all those who want to go, then start afresh with those who really have the conviction to stay. Then you can build a strong church.
Yeah.
You can't force people to stay. You lock the doors in there, then ask them to be happy in there when all the doors and windows are locked. You cannot do that. Actually, they will end up breaking the windows and still try and go. So I
Yeah.
argue strongly. I argue strongly against that. No one is trying to destroy the church. If anything, there are those people who have been destroying the church by not observing its rules.
Yeah.
We say that in the United Methodist Church, the General Conference is the only body that speaks for the denomination.
Right.
And when it is spoken, some people have the audacity to go against what the denomination has said. Then who is destroying the church?
Right. Yeah.
We have had conferences who set and resolved to pass resolutions not to follow the book of discipline.
Yeah.
We have heard of people who have declared that they will not follow the resolution of 2019.
Right.
Then you accuse those who are trying to defend it of trying to destroy the church. I find that very awkward.
Well, yeah, it's there. We're living in two different worlds. That's become more and more clear. When they hear your language of, we need to give out information so that if people don't want to be here, they can leave. What they hear is, we want to split the church up. That's what they hear. And then they don't see any problem whatsoever with following their own consciences rather than the shared covenant that we have in the book of discipline. So, and once again, I'm with you. I'm a traditionalist conservative, but it becomes clear to me that liberals and conservatives are just speaking past one another. And everybody would agree that information and transparency is good. But then institutionalists would say that evangelical caucus groups cannot be trusted, that we will give out false information. Misinformation is the term we get accused of. So part of the reason I'm doing this video series is because I think it's important to have these conversations out in the open so that people can not just hear the information, but see the face, hear the voice of the people who's saying it. It's much harder to call you a liar when you can see your face and hear your voice. So my concern, and your time is valuable, and so is mine, and we need to draw our time to a close. But as I visit with Ande, as I visit with Jerry, as I visit with you, Simon, as I look each of you in the eyes, I do not suspect that any of you are lying at all. I think you are telling the truth, and I believe that you have good intentions. I believe you love Jesus. And it breaks my heart to see the same separation between you guys that we see sometimes in America. We really should be able to all stand together and fight for what God's holy word says and how we know we should live. So, and it breaks my heart to see, in America, the bishops have been very different from the people in the pews for a long time. And that's a sad thing. And I hate that that's how it seems to be going in Africa as well. And I think you and I both just need to continue to pray that that we can seek unity together. My heart is very encouraged. I was afraid that as I spoke with my brothers in Africa, that you would be saying, you Americans are too crazy. We can't work with you guys anymore. And I don't hear you saying that. I hear you saying, you have the same gospel there that we have here. We're called to be in unity together, and we believe we can work together. But the challenge of the present time is seeing through the lies that are all around us. So I want to keep talking to you for the rest of the day, but I can't. But I'm going to continue to have conversations, and I hope that it's helpful to you. I hope that Africans themselves listen to you and to others speak, and kind of, I hope it's helpful in getting out good information. And if at any point, Simon, you think that I'm not being helpful, would you make me a commitment that you'll tell me to shut up, please?
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. Yes. I believe in transparency, and I believe in being very upfront. If I really believe that I think you are going a bit offside, I want to offer, and tell you that, I don't think this is right. I think you are going the other direction. I'm very open to that.
Good.
And this conversation has been very, very, very helpful, even for me. And my prayer as we go forward is, let's give information to our people.
Yes.
allow people to understand what is happening. They will also intercede. They will pray for what is happening. And this will only help us to make the best decision for the bigger picture.
Yes, sir.
Yes, the institutionalists may think that they want to keep this thing intact. It's very difficult when you have not resolved the problems that are keeping us apart underneath there.
Yes.
So we need to start from there, then we go up to be able to give, to then build a vibrant church that, you know, that will pass down to generations long after we are all gone.
Yes.
This is what we would want to see.
Yes.
Thank you, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Simon. My brother, would you please say a short prayer for us?
Thank you very much. Let us pray. Awesome God, we come before you now as we thank you, Father, for this time you afforded us in this conversation. We know a lot is going on in our lives as a denomination, but we get excited when we realize that as our Father, you are always in control. You know what is good for us, even before we know it or think about it. So we surrender ourselves to you, O Lord, that you may help us, you may guide us, you may guide your church. We thank you, Lord, for all the leaders that are putting some effort to have at least some solutions, lasting solutions on the challenges that we have. Yes. And we will pray that, Father, you just reveal your way to us that we may walk in it. We thank you, Lord, for this conversation. May it bring fruits to other people who may listen to it. May it bring fruits to other people who may think as we do. But all in all, we surrender everything in your hands, knowing that you are our Father and you are in control of everything. We thank you for this time as we pray in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Simon.
Thank you, Jeff. It was a pleasure.
Likewise.
Greatly appreciate it.
Likewise. All right. We'll talk again soon. Be well.
Cheers.
All right. That was Simon Mafunda. He is the head of the WCA in Africa. And that was obviously another good conversation. I obviously really enjoy what I do. I love talking to people and just a lot of very faithful Methodists over there. As I said to him, it breaks my heart that people who would agree on the most important things find themselves so divided and suspicious of one another. It's just one of the ways that Satan works. So let's rebuke that and pray for a future of unity, not just with Africans between one another, but also between Africans and Americans and Asians. We know we're all going to be together in the kingdom, so we should be together now. All right. Thanks for joining me.